people joining us from Buena Vista, and they are going to hear our presentation and our discussion for a bit, and then they're actually going to leave the virtual world and carry on with the discussion in person. So we are just at BPAS looking for many, many ways to bring information to people who need it in as many ways as possible. And we really appreciate that you're here today. My name is Joyce Nussbaum. I am Programs Director for Valley Program for Aging Services. And we are very excited to be providing in-person programming again after so long of not being able to. Before I introduce our panelists, I just want to give you a little bit of an idea of why I wanted us to have this program. And then I'm going to turn it over to our panelists. They'll each speak for just a few minutes, up to 10 minutes about their area of expertise. And when we're finished with that, we'll go ahead and entertain your questions, okay? There's a book called The Right Place and the Right Time by Ryan Frederick. And I've read it about 3 times now. And for me to read a book more than once is actually pretty impressive. He talks about the value of living in our preferred place at different stages in our life and what makes a place preferred. So place can help us have purpose. It can help us have social connectedness, but our circumstances and our physical and financial health can often limit what our choices are. We don't always get to choose the best place, at least the place that we think is best in our own mind. Because in our mind, we have a best place that like elevates all of these things to their very best possibility. But being in the right place adds value to our lives. And in his book, he talks about rural versus urban and people who think they've lived a rural life all their life, but they think if they move to the city, they could walk to the places they need to be to. And then they find out that they really don't like city life at all after they've sold their property and moved. And so it just gathering information as much as possible before we make those changes. He also mentions that we talk a lot about aging in place, and he actually does not like that terminology. And I always did until I read the information, and now I'm not sure. So he claims that aging in place often can just be because we don't have a plan or want a plan or want to make changes. And so we just say, we're going to age in place. And we really don't do the work of figuring out what that means. He talks more about living in community, and both are important. So what is right for you? Not comparing to what was, but what is right now? What is right for you right now? And what is possible today? That's what's really important. So today we're here to learn how we can plan better, how we can make good choices. We have options. We can talk about options for many different kinds of places to live as we grow older. And hopefully we can make these changes in a way that we have control of, rather than being faced with an abrupt change that we don't have control. So think about today, what matters most to you about where you live as you grow older. Today we have 4, they're called panelists on this flyer, and we don't have a table, so it feels like not a panel, but we have 4 amazing people here to share with us about different aspects of the power of place and the power of being in the right place. So Jeanette Suter is the Vice President of Independent Assisted Living here at Bridgewater. Ryan Miracle is a certified financial planner and investment manager with Cornerstone Wealth Advisors, and a grandson to a lovely lady that I just got to meet. So that's cool too. Daryl Pfeiffer is, did I say that right? Yes, is the treasurer for Valley Villagers. And he's also a retired senior housing administrator. So we'll have lots to learn from him. And then Betsy Glendye is a realtor with Funkhauser Real Estate Group, and she specializes in housing options for those who are 55 and older. So Jeanette, I'm gonna ask you to come first. She gave me a look that said, not first.
Happy to.
Okay, very good. Thank you.
Well, good afternoon, everyone. I hope, and hello to everyone in the virtual world of Buena Vista or the world down there. And nice to see everyone. Welcome to Bridgewater Retirement Community, first of all. So nice to see some familiar faces and welcome new ones as well. So we are so glad to have you all today. As Joyce mentioned, I am here at Bridgewater Retirement Community and Independent and Assisted Living. Is where my focus is. However, prior to being at Bridgewater Retirement Community, I worked as a care manager and my background is in social work. So I just wanted to reiterate a little bit with what Joyce was saying as well. Can you all hear me okay? I'm trying to also gauge the online world and the in-person world as well. Just to reiterate a little bit with what Joyce was saying, and I just wanted to emphasize the component of how important conversations are as you are taking into consideration options and goals for yourself, and how important conversations, if you have a support system, if you have adult children, if you have close relatives, or whoever might be helping support along the way, the importance of conversations with them as well. I know with my family directly, we have had conversations. I would love to have more conversations, and I'm kind of sometimes waiting on those conversations to be started by my parents, and I just say from my perspective, I would welcome them to happen more and just be a little bit more open as well. So I would just encourage you, if that's situational for you all as well, just to have conversations as you feel comfortable and as you're able to. So also, I think in when I was reading the flyer that I saw for this today, where will you live your best life? What should you consider as you think about moving to a new home or area? Also, just to emphasize evaluating, and reevaluating from a social worker perspective. Sometimes that's what you have to do. Evaluating your support system, evaluating your resources, and also first and foremost too, just evaluating yourself, your goals, your personality, your thoughts, what will feel best, look best, work best for whatever you feel like to anticipate your needs moving forward. So that's my personal thoughts on from that perspective on what I've learned along the way. So just wanted to share that as well. So Bridgewater Retirement Communities and continuing care retirement communities in general, you'll often hear the words life plan community now as well as what is the kind of a new phrase for that. I gave each of you, and sorry I didn't give it to you all, but you have a little brochure right in front of you that just talks about, if you open it up, I just wanted you to reference the inside. Continuing care retirement communities are often defined with having various levels of care to help folks move to a community to be able to provide that support of care and support along the way as your needs may change. So you'll see the various different levels of care there. That's from, we refer to it as, like I said, independent living. Then we have assisted living, and within assisted living, we also have memory support, and then also our nursing households here also. So again, it's really evaluating what feels right, what anticipating might be right for you. A retirement community, the continuing care retirement community is truly built on community and engagement. And if those words sound good of something that might be of value to you, then I would encourage you to look into that. Of course, you have to also take into consideration resources and the ability for different avenues for you of what might be best. But if that is something that you might want to be able to consider, then also looking at, is it the engagement, is the activities, is it that social stimulation? That's great for some people. It may not be the best option for others, and that's completely up to you as individuals as well. But one thing that's probably the most attractive component of a retirement community is, as your needs do change, you can follow along our spectrum of care support and be there as a resource for you along the way. So I think that's probably one of the most attractive features. Here in independent living, we have different, and for most retirement communities, I think would be a safe bet to say, at least in this area, there's different avenues to meet the needs of each individual, whether that's a building, whether that's a duplex or whether that's a single family home. So we have different options to hopefully meet the different needs along the way. But right here, we have 269 individual units of some kind, whether that is an apartment building, a duplex, or an individual single family home, and about 350 independent living residents that live here on our campus. And then also, if you transition I can talk a little bit about assisted living as well, but assisted living is defined here. We have two different levels of support: basic level of assisted living and enhanced level of assisted living. Basic level is when you need just basically no extra assistance, or maybe one assistance with an activity daily living, and then enhanced level is from 2 to 3 from there. So I often get asked in the social worker world as well, as like, when should you consider assisted living, whether it's a retirement community or whether it's anywhere else out in the community, whether it's a family member that might be needing a little bit of additional extra support. And there's no magic ball sometimes to look into to know exactly when is the best time to consider assisted living support. And sometimes, when the worst time is to try to make a decision is the time of crisis. So when you start hearing the words of I'm managing, I'm coping, I'm piecing it together, is when we often say that might be the time when you might want to start considering some additional levels of support. So that's what we have here for you. Also, we have memory support that's trained in dementia training. It has very much a focus on residents, resident-led activities, resident-led support, and then also a secure environment, of course, if that's the appropriate level for that person. So that is a lot of information in a very small nutshell. I had you all again down there too. And I'll be here for questions along the way. If there's anything I can help with, please let me know.
Before you sit down, would you just clarify about activities of daily living?
Sure. I'm sorry. Yes. So the activities of daily living are the basics of dressing, bathing, ambulation, toileting assistance, those types of things, literally your activities of daily support. That's what that is. So thank you.
Thank you for that.
Everyone.
All right, Ryan, would you join us?
Thanks for everybody being here, and thank you, Joyce and VPAS. I'm also the chair on the advisory council for the Valley Program for Aging Services. I've only been on there for 2 years, but I can't say enough about the organization and what it means to most of our clientele are retired or getting ready to retire. I'm a certified financial planner. For about the past 20 years, I've seen one generation move on and the other come into retirement now with the boomers. And I grew up in the Shenandoah Valley. My mother was a nurse and director of nursing at the Virginia Mennonite Retirement Community for many years. I spent a lot of my summers as a youth volunteering in the Alzheimer's unit. And so I had a pretty upfront and close idea of how aging can be in people's lives and what families need to think about. And Jeanette hit on it very well. It's the planning. Obviously, most of what we do in wealth advising is planning, and planning doesn't have to be a super comprehensive 300-page binder. And I think that's what intimidates people a lot. Planning can be just done on a legal pad. And what I like to try to do is take the individual where they are. Everybody's situation is going to be a little bit unique and different to them. And you really have to sit down and go, all right, where does the money come from? What are your sources? What are your options with those sources? Let's lay everything out on the table and go through a process of elimination about what is going to make the most sense for you in your situation. Whether it's taking a pension now or later, or taking Social Security now or delaying it. Those types of options, not everybody is unfortunately made aware of. And so we really want to find out, right, what is it that we know, but what is it that we don't know that could really impact our decision-making? And what are your assets? Are they in retirement accounts or not? Do you have real estate? These all factor into what will your choices be when it comes to assisted or independent living in retirement. And again, to hearken to Jeanette and also this aging in place idea, what I try to stress to people is we don't know what life is going to mean for us in retirement. Everything we do It doesn't have to just be in a 401k. Everything we do affects our retirement, our education, going back to school, starting a small business, giving family members loans that we think will get paid back. All of these things affect our retirement, and so does our relationships with ourselves, our family, and our community. And I talk about these tales of two ideal retirements. Maybe you do want to be on a rural setting like the Swiss Family Robinson and live off the grid on everything. And that's great, but you have to be able to plan that at some point you may not be able to take care of yourself. You may not be able to drive. Where are you going to go? And this is something you should talk to your family at least once a year about. At least have an idea. Maybe mom and dad will move in with their daughter or their son. They'll build an extension. Start those plans when everybody's happy and getting along and has the choice. We don't want to make these choices when we don't have any choice because our choices lessen. I always say we want to make our decisions before they make themselves for us. And talking about all the things that you can do and just doing a process elimination. I speak from personal family experience with Bridgewater Home. I might be doing a commercial here for Bridgewater, but I hike in my grandmother. She moved in here at age 77, way before she had to. She's 97 now. She still walks around. She still drives. Maybe she shouldn't all the time, but she still has her wit and her sense of humor. And we talked about how we do this and how do we do retirement right. And we stay engaged. And that's one of the most important things I can say. And so sometimes that's living with family. Sometimes it is like a duplex, and sometimes it is independent living where you can be in a pedestrian community. I can't emphasize enough the ability to walk and engage with people. And so much of what my job is thinking in terms of holistically, what is going to give you the best chance for the best success in retirement. And success in retirement isn't always tied to just money. It's tied to your true happiness. And a lot of that is from our social interaction. I think the last 2 years taught us that more than anything else, that we all really do need each other in some way. Maybe not right next door, but and the other thing I like about what they've done to this place in particular, any place, it's encouraging for the younger family members to come and visit. And that's really key and important, is that we see our grandparents and we see those that have led us to where we are. But we want to have a place that is kind of enjoyable to be. And so I commend Bridgewater for their design here. But also the ability that if we can't drive, how is our life going to be? And I see too often people think that they'll be fine, but we change sometimes as we get older. We may not be as nice and go-getting as we used to be. And it's at that point that now we have to go move. And it creates a lot more stress in our family. And so this is something I think people should take in stock at least once a year with yourself and your significant other and your family and a disinterested third party. Not to say that I'm disinterested, but more objective, to at least give you a perspective that maybe you're not thinking about. And so obviously we're going to get to it in a minute. Unfortunately, a lot of this does come down to numbers sometimes. So we do need to talk about budgets and things like that. So thank you all for being here, and I'll enjoy the questions later. Appreciate it.
What's next?
Hello, I'm Daryl Pfeiffer. Joyce, thank you so much. And Buena Vista folks, being a Philadelphia Phillies fan, and we're hoping that Charlie Manuel's there someplace today. But I'm here representing Valley Village. Valley Village is a 10-year-old organization that is not a physical presence anywhere. Valley Village is one of 250 national chapters of a organization called Village to Village that began 20 years ago in Beacon Hill outside Boston. In the afternoon, when some folks were together like we are today, said, you know, how can we do this differently? How can we create more options as we age in community? So the organization was begun. Our local Valley Village joined 10 years ago. We represent about 150 individuals, about 80 households. And it is an organization that has activities going on almost weekly, if not weekly. That includes emphasis in wellness, education, volunteerism. We do tours. We do just plain social activities, when we just want to do something together. An important part of it is the volunteerism. It's called just one call. So if one of our members are needing some help with something, maybe a visit to the eye doctor, and they know they should not be driving home because of dilation, they can call us and we will provide someone, really one of us, to help with that driving. We also have a vendor reference database where we have already vetted different vendors in the area to fit into the needs that we have. Many times our jobs are that small that it's hard to find someone that's reliable and punctual to get things taken care of. That's an important part. Exercise, we have walking, yoga, a lot of neat things to continue to age in community while staying in one's own home. The thing that's probably important for me to think about is I do not feel like our household needs a lot of help at this point. We're paying into the future. We're investing into the future, because when we get to that point where we do need some help, we're part of an organization, and a healthy organization, that can provide those services to us. So that might be care navigation. As we move forward, we're going to have to also recognize that not everyone in our community, not everyone in Valley Village would even have an option of a continuous care retirement community because of financial restraints. So we like to partner. We partner very closely with the retirement communities in our area, with Bridgewater, Sunnyside, Virginia Mennonite Retirement Community, and they understand very clearly that much of the population that we are relating to, this community might not be affordable to them. Now, with that said, I'm also a caregiver. My wife and I are a very personal caregiver to a resident here at Bridgewater in the assisted living. And wow, we're very grateful for that living experience as well. So we're creating these options that are alternatives to people, maybe first opportunities to many people, to how do we navigate this whole thing of aging and living independently, whether that's living independently within Bridgewater, or if that's living independently within assisted living at Bridgewater. We all want the independence to live in the opportunities that we have. So that's Valley Village. It's really a neat organization. They're the greater Harrisonburg area, so we're not limited to Harrisonburg. We have folks as far away as Bridgewater. And if you know of anyone who is interested in remaining in their existing living situation and looking for that support group, providing education and opportunities for them, please consider us. I'd like to change hats a little bit and talk about something else that was referenced on the brochure, and that me being involved in a retirement community as an administrator. Prior to moving to Harrisonburg, I was vice president for a retirement community of similar size and excellence of Bridgewater. I mean, we're talking about a high-class retirement community, which we quickly reference as a CCRC. This was a rural experience. They were having people asking about something downtown Lancaster City. They were also starting to address this thing of that middle ground between subsidized housing for those who were less capable financially. So what we did is I was in a bracketed project where I was committed from the time of the construction to full resident occupancy. We took a 4-story warehouse downtown Lancaster City, 2 blocks off Center Square, that was basically abandoned for 15 years. And we turned it into 36 residential living apartments, 24 1-bedroom, 12 2-bedroom. And we went to that market that was above the subsidized housing market and still needed to watch their resources. About 10% of our residents did end up transitioning into the retirement community as their needs had increased. 2/3 of our residents could never have afforded a CCRC. And that has become a model where that retirement community now is moving into another project a block away. And that, in fact, is going to have 3/4 of the residents knowingly subsidizing 1/4 of the residents in a living experience together to bring together these worlds of senior living. It was a really neat project. I walked in with the 2 befores going up. As soon as I could, I started interfacing with people in the community and giving tours, and we learned a lot. We learned a lot of things we wish we had done differently. We learned a lot of things that we could not have succeeded without doing, but it was very energizing. It was a very energizing model of the different things in our community by which we provide independent living. I think that's all I have. I'm open to any questions at any point. Thank you. Thank you so much for your time.
Thank you.
You three are hard to have to follow. So I'm not sure this is a good idea, being the last person. Thank you, Joyce, for asking me to be here. Thank you for the Buena Vista group and for you all that are here with us today. As Joyce said, I am Betsy Heatwell Glendye. I'm a realtor with Funkhauser Real Estate Group in Harrisonburg. I started my career in 1985. And so this July, I'll be in the business for 37 years. And I'm full-time. Our office does have 4 offices. We're in Luray, Woodstock, Elkton, and Harrisonburg. I've been through a lot of the highs and I've been through a lot of the lows. What we're going through right now is a wonderful high for a seller, but it's a really tough time for a buyer because you're up against 4, sometimes 6 different people. And so now is a great time if you are thinking about selling your house. Our discussion today is what are the options for 55 and over? And so I've divided my message into 3 sections. One is staying in your own home. One, maybe moving to a 1-level or a duplex, or a third is moving into a 55 and older retirement. So I'm trying to cover all the bases. The best thing you can do when we are at this stage in our life is to start a budget. And you can find budgets everywhere. This is just one I happened to find. I think all of you had one. If you don't, there's some on the back table. That I can't stress that enough. You really got to have your budget set to plan for your future, kind of like you were saying. Some couples disagree with this. You know, one of you wants to stay in your home still. You're not ready to give up your yard. You're not ready to give up your neighbors and things like that. So what are the pros of staying in your own home? The one thing is, do you have a bedroom on the first level? Do you have a bathroom on that first level? Your laundry. I mean, there's so many things we take for granted that we're doing now, but all of a sudden something changes and you can't do those things. One thing is, you know what we have to pay in homeowners insurance. We know basically what our utilities are each year. Maintenance, we kind of know what we budget for food each year. Maybe your roof, your air conditioning and heating. I mean, these are all things that are major. And so you want to make sure you're budgeting so that if that happens before you move out or even before you put it on the market, because if you're going to have to put a roof on or you're going to have to put a new air conditioner in, that's money out of pocket before you can even put it on the market. Have stairs in your house. So, I mean, there's an option that you can do. You can decide, do I want to stay in my house? Is there another option? Is there a room that we can turn into a bedroom? Is there a room that can be a full bath in the laundry and be able to stay in your home as long as you can? As Ryan had said, I mean, a lot of people can't afford to move into the retirement villages. And then if you decide to do an addition, and additions can cost a lot of money. So you got to make sure if I put this money in for a new primary bedroom on the first level, a bath and a laundry, am I going to be, let's say it costs 30,000 in my neighborhood, will my neighborhood support me adding that to my house? If not, then you don't want to do that. Then the next level is, I guess, one thing to back up. If we stay in our homes and pass away there, then our kids are left to go through all of our wonderful treasures that we all keep. But if we decide to go to our second option is to go into a ranch or to a duplex, then you're going through your items. And if you have things you want your children to go to, and they're going to thank you because, yay, I don't have to go through all this stuff. I have several friends doing that right now, having to go through old farmhouses. And it's amazing what I'll look at my house and I know I have a lot of stuff too. So the next option is the duplex and the one level living. And we have few sections here, but if I was an investor, boy, that's where I would love to invest my money. We just don't have enough supply for duplexes and one level living. And so that's where, you know, somebody who wants to do some investment there, Ryan, you know, that's a good place. And the big thing is, if you go into that smaller, again, you want to take some of your treasures with you, you know, just luggage. I mean, it's amazing. Sometimes I'll go through houses with customers and it's like, where did I put my Christmas decorations? Where did I put our luggage when we go to travel? So those are all things you kind of need to look at to make sure that there is enough there for you. And then I guess I kind of broke this into kind of a plus for you, I guess, for the retirement homes. And then but the next option is going into a 55 and older retirement place. And it's amazing doing the research for my topic. There's like 15 plus different places between Winchester and Charlottesville. And they all have so many different amenities. You really have to do your homework. And so I would suggest, if you're thinking about moving to a 55 and older, go and interview for maybe even 6 people, you know, different places, because they all have something different. I was amazed when I found out to buy into some of the little cottages or the villas or apartments, they can cost as much as $200,000 all the way up to $900,000. I was like, what? So, okay, I move in and let's say I have bought this place, but guess what? I have to pay rent still each month. And for an individual, that rent can be anywhere from $2,000 to $2,400. And if you are coming as a couple, that can be as much as $2,600 to $2,900. So when you're doing these interviews, deciding, do I stay at home or do I move here? These are a lot of questions that you can want to ask them. You know, what do these monthly fees cover? Are they going to take care of all my outside maintenance? Are they going to take care of the inside maintenance? If something happens with my air conditioner, my refrigerator, is that all covered in that monthly fee? Do they pay all the utilities, your electric, water, trash pickup? And the big thing is there an emergency handicap type place there? If I have something happen, is there something I can push for somebody to come and help me? And some of these places, I was amazed, are not really built handicap accessible. So make sure, because if one of you happens to get in a wheelchair or you need a walker, are you able to maneuver those things in one of these retirement places? As you were talking about wellness and, you know, exercise, do they provide something like that? I think Bridgewater does. There's something that you can buy into to go over to the wellness center, and you can have swimming. Some of these places though now are offering their own exercise rooms, their own swimming. Is there a dining service? Do I have to pay extra, or does this little extra fee paid for me to go out into the dining room. Let's say I want to have a family gathering. Is there a place where I can have my children come and we can do a family gathering or some catering? Transportation, as you were talking about, a lot of people, you can't, when you move into these retirement places, you need transportation. You know, if does that fee let you go have someone take you to Walmart or the grocery store, or if you want to go to the movies or, you know, different things like that. Do they have special activities? You know, do they have like a roundtable discussion? We have so many neat authors in our area. You know, what a great thing for a retirement place to invite an author in to come and talk. Is there a book club available? You know, there's just so many things. Or is there a game room, craft room? You know, a lot of guys just like to sit around and have coffee and talk. Is there a place for that? Another big thing is renter's insurance. So if you move, you know, these buildings are covered by Bridgewater's insurance, but your contents are not. So you're going to have to pay renter's insurance. And then if something would happen to me and I passed away and I put all this money out, what would my estate get? Would they get nothing? Would they get 25%, 50%, or 100%? So like I said, I'm on the end of helping you sell your house, but I want you to be happy when you're making this next step and make sure that you are getting all the questions, because I have interviewed families and I have gone to look at houses to list, and they did their budget. There was not money to live in a place like this. I have another couple that they made their visits. They looked at their budget and they realized they were going to save $7,000 a year if they stayed in their own home. So if they have good health for another 7 years, that's $49,000 extra. And hopefully they do stay well, because that's the choice they decided to do. Again, I can't stress enough, excuse me, is doing a budget. And always remember the 50-30-20 basic rule after your taxes. 50% is for our needs, 30% is for our saving or for our wants, and then 20% is for our needs. So thanks for me here, and if you have any questions, let me know. Oh, I did want to mention one. Oh, it was 50, 20, 50, 30, and 20. And the 50 is your needs, the 30 is your wants, and the 20 is your savings. And if you've not read this book, Being Mortal, I highly recommend it. A friend didn't even know I was doing this talk, and it's a wonderful book. His name is Atul, A-T-U-L, G-A-W-A-N-D-E. Do you know how you say his last name? Because Daryl had said he was familiar with this book, and he hadn't read it yet, but you had a, Being Mortal, M-O-R-T, M-O-R-T-A-L. And I did leave some, I don't know if any of you, if you're interested in what the market is doing. Our office puts this out about once a week. Once in a while, it's every other week. And I mean, it's amazing, like new listings last, a couple of weeks ago were 557 to date. So you can read this. I'm not going to read the whole thing, but it has a lot of information there. And one other thing, I don't know if any of you have heard of Mary Walker. And she was written up, somebody that's with the Daughters of American Revolution shared this article with me, and she designed a very special walker. So if you know someone that needs a walker, it's interesting. So thank you.
It's been really informative, and I thank each of you for your presentations. I'm curious if you all have some questions. I have lots if you don't, but I also want to give the group in Buena Vista a chance to share any questions they have before they leave us for their own chat there. So I've asked Marissa to monitor that from the chat and see if they have any questions.
Joyce, we're on audio now.
Okay,
Can you hear me?
yes.
Do y'all have any questions for the panel? Yes, ma'am.
Yes, the ratio of 50, 30, 20, I did not get that clearly. The previous speaker.
Okay, the clarification on 50, 30, 20, I'll read what I think you said, and then you can tell me if I'm wrong. How's that? 50% of your income should be used for your needs, 30% for your wants, and 20% for your savings. That's what you said, right? Did you want more clarification beyond that?
Is that good?
Good, yes, thank you.
Okay.
Anyone else here from Buena Vista? Yes, ma'am.
When you put the house on the market, what kind of information should you have to feed to the Realtor? What kind of questions is the Realtor going to ask you? to put Numbers on.
Did y'all get that up there?
Kind of. I'm sorry.
The question is, if you put your house on the market, what kind of information should we be providing to the Realtor?
The best thing is if you have the ages of like your roof and your AC and your heating. I always have a sheet with a little notebook, and I ask people to give their rates. What is your electric bill run? What is your, especially the heating and AC. Of course, I'm one of these people that I'm cold natured, so I may keep my thermometer. So we try to, say, okay, if it looks like a high bill, this is why, because we keep it at 78 degrees. And making sure, if you have a good yard man in your neighborhood, if you have someone that's done, if you have a heating and AC company that comes and maintains your AC and heating every year, it's good to have that and see the records for that. Your taxes, of course, I usually look that up. I have to apply for the taxes. But right now, everybody had kind of a jump. I don't know what happened in Buena Vista, but in Harrisonburg and Rockingham, everybody got a little surprise in the mail that theirs jumped way up. Did that answer your question?
Partially. Partially. Anything else?
No, but I have to think.
Okay. All right. Anyone else? Before we bid adieu to our friends up north?
I do have
One more question? Yes.
If you buy in, say, $200,000 and they go out of business, what happens to your investment?
If the question is for Ryan, are you there?
Here.
All right. Can you say that one more time?
All right, if you buy in at, say, $200,000 and you're paying rent and they go out of business, what happens to your original investment? What happens to you?
Yes. Do you want to repeat to the group?
If you buy in at $200,000 to an investment and then that company goes out of business, what happens to your investment? Is that what you're asking?
And what happens to you?
What happens to you?
You're talking about an assisted living facility, you've lost your money. But I think I would want to defer to Jeanette if it was an issue of an institution, not Bridgewater, but how what happens if someone, I'm assuming it's a question, if I buy into an assisted living facility and then they go out of business, is that what you're asking
Yes,
about?
yes,
Because any other
yes.
investment that goes bankrupt, you've lost all your money. And don't try to remember the Lee Iacocca days back in the 80s. A lot of times when a company is going to go under, we sometimes get people calling about buying, thinking the stock will go back up. Once a company goes to bankruptcy, your shares are worthless. So yeah, that I do not know. You would have to make sure you investigate the individual facilities and read the fine print. One thing I didn't mention earlier amongst a lot of other things is, and thank you for this panel for bringing those up, but I do encourage people, you want to get 2-3 places that you really, really want to go to that you would say, I could see myself here for the remainder of my years. And you want to get on the waiting list. You can always say no, but there is, as Betsy said, there is a dearth of opportunity for people to find one level places where they want to go. And remembering, we have more people over the age of 65 than under the age of 5 on the earth now. It's the first time ever. We're getting older globally and we're getting older nationally. And supply and demand, there's more and more of you out there and more of you looking for the same thing. And when we increase the demand, then the prices are going to go up. I do encourage people, please do not assume that you will sell your nice 4 acres house and clear 100 or 200 grand and be able to go and buy something much cheaper. You count those chickens after they hatch, not beforehand. And I go the assumption that moving to the assisted living will take up the value of our real estate. But as far as directly to that question, I can't speak for that, but I think in the fine print, there should be some clawback provisions before I would answer to something like that. And I'll step back if Jeanette wants to answer any more to that. Sorry.
I would just add to that is that oftentimes with assisted living communities, you're going to be paying monthly at that point anyways. So it's not, you're not looking at that entry investment at that level of support.
So the investment then is more for independent living?
Correct, the entry fee for independent living.
So what happens if they go out? And they've got your 200,000 and you've been paying 2,500 a month, and then you say, sorry. So it is.
So we still have a question about that, but perhaps our local realtors can help and talk about that as well. It sounds like though the answer is to really investigate the facility that you're going to be moving into to find out those kinds of questions, because as I understand it, that varies. Is that correct?
My understanding was that you have to read the fine print on for the investment that you're making and see what their process is or what their rules are. Am I right on that? Yeah. Okay.
Is there a rating service? I'm not smart enough to do that.
Is there a rating
Rating
service?
service that rates the financial stability of these places?
Is there a rating service that addresses the financial stability of assisted living and independent living?
I'm not aware of that. Personally, I'm not aware of that, but that doesn't necessarily mean there isn't. I know there's a lot of more of the ratings are related to care with how nursing home level of support through Medicare and through the Department of Social Services. So I can't answer that as far as financial stability for assisted living institutions. There are probably some websites out there related to, especially the nonprofits that might evaluate that, but I don't know that for sure. So I'm sorry to not be able to provide that resource.
If we find anything out about that, we'll certainly relay that information.
Pass it on down. Anybody else here?
Yes. Bringing up nonprofit, what about choosing between a nonprofit religious-based service and a profit-motivated service, an investment-motivated service?
Okay, so choosing between a nonprofit living facility and an investment or for-profit facility. Anybody want to touch that?
Quick, but because I want to make sure Jeanette can speak without I'll brag for her. I'd spent 20 plus years doing financial advising in Charlottesville and the Shenandoah Valley. And one of my mother's third careers was quality assurance. And she would go around and look at a lot of homes. And I did some volunteer work in college in different homes. I've always been a little hesitant about the for-profit model. There's a lot of negative aspects that can happen there as far as cutting corners, having staff taking care of too many people. That doesn't mean that they're not very good ones out there. I'm not saying that, but we are very blessed in the Valley with a lot of religious-based nonprofit or religious affiliated nonprofit facilities that I highly encourage. I don't know if anybody's tallied how many times I've referred Bridgewater as one of the most idyllic places to be in retirement because of all the amenities you have in such a small, very quiet, nice community location. And to think in terms of what is it like in the atmosphere around that place? I think that is really one of the things I would look at too, is not just the facility itself, but what is surrounding the facility. Is there anything for you to do outside that facility? But as far as a for-profit versus nonprofit, I tend to lean on toward the nonprofit ones particularly, but I don't want to say the for-profit can't provide you what you're looking for. Again, it's very, very specific to the individual situation. But my experience and the thousands of families I've talked to, this experience has been very, very happy with the nonprofit, particularly the ones we have here in the Valley.
Jeanette, do you have anything to add?
To that also, the importance of, yes, investing everything back into the community from the nonprofit perspective, but also being able to support the gap of care to operational income by fundraising through the very generous means of the community by being a nonprofit. The stewardship component of that is very important. And so I think that does help be able to provide that promise of being able to care for individuals throughout their journey by being able to support and fundraise and take donations and from the community and very giving individuals, which we are blessed to live in a very, very generous and giving community. So from a nonprofit perspective, that's incredibly important to us.
Anybody else down here?
What
One more?
about non-married couples? Is there any problem with domestic partnership moving into these places?
Did you get that one, Joyce?
Unmarried, but, okay.
Unmarried domestic partner.
Okay, is there any restriction on unmarried domestic partners?
No. And we even have, and I also would say we did have just 2 siblings actually come in together. So whatever that partnership might be, I would have to check into that a little bit more as far as how that is financially. I can't answer that, it'd be a marketing question, but philosophically open to it.
And one more?
What about smoking and drinking?
I think smoking is related to each individual facility as well, right?
It's tobacco and vape free.
Okay.
What did she say?
But I have
was that?
been many places that don't allow smoking.
Oh,
Okay. Thank you for joining us. You're welcome to stay with us as long as you'd like, but I'm going to open it up now to questions from the group that's here as well. And those of you who joined us online that aren't in Buena Vista, please put your question in the chat or unmute yourself, and we'll be happy to entertain your question as well. So from this group, do you have questions? Okay, Diana.
Finances, et cetera, you're able to get into that, like myself, I don't have. And out or can't keep up with the community, this particular, I guess. Care that if I need it.
Yes. Okay, so Jeanette, if you want to come over here, I'm going to repeat the question for those of you online, and then I'll let you answer. So the question is for the stewardship issues, if somebody enters independent or assisted living at a certain time and level of income, but then their funds run out, does the nonprofit organization continue to support them in living in that place even after that time.
Sure. And that's our forever family promise, essentially. So yes, if now there's going to be an evaluation and looking at assets and net assets with our marketing counselors upon entry to look at that and to ask those questions of what specifically have the resources to be able to meet the needs of that component. But yes, so if you are 60 and come in and live to be 99 and had 10 years of nursing home level of support, that will eat through a lot of resources, no doubt about it. But that is the forever family year, and that is what is very nice as far a nice feeling from a security perspective of being a part of a continuing care retirement community. Yes. Mhm.
Had somebody ask me a question.
Can you speak to the whole group, please?
I'm just trying to. see
Okay.
here.
I had someone that I was waiting to, because this was going to be part of my talk, but I felt I wanted to, ask Jeanette, if someone does run out of their funds, is there somebody on the site here that helps them figure out Medicaid or whatever avenue? Is there somebody here? Because I had someone say they're going through something and they're doing all this themselves so I was just going to see what you all do here, Bridgewater.
Right. So we do, and it's our business department essentially, and we invite folks as soon as you feel like you are, even if whatever level of support, wherever, and if there's a transition impending, to be able to talk through that, to be able to talk about if you need to apply for additional resources, community grants or Medicaid at that point. So we would encourage that. We encourage the conversations to happen early. And we are just now starting to have conversations a little bit more frequently with our folks as well, but possibly every 5 years. That's what we're talking about, to be able just to re-invite having conversations about that, what that would look like, what you can go ahead and pay for, what we can do to help support you along the way, and for our planning purposes also. So yes.
I have a question for regarding Valley Village. What is the cost to join, or the monthly or yearly fees for that?
Thank you. It is $60 per year per individual. So if it's a couple, we have one household that is more than 2 people, and that is still capped at $120 a year. And we do some cost sharing with special events that might be ticket entry, that type of thing. But generally, all of the services that we provide, and these are not in-home healthcare services, no, but all the services that we provide or the coordination we provide is covered by that $60 a year.
Okay, so one more follow-up question, and then I'll let you guys ask again. You mentioned in-home healthcare. So suppose we are neighbors and we both need some healthcare, and the organization or the agency requires 4 hours. Do you anytime try to pair people together so that they can share those 4 hours, or is that beyond what Valley Village does?
That would be great
Yeah.
if we could do that, but that is not for us to determine. That would be for the caregiver, the in-home healthcare or the in-home care provider would be the one who would have to waive the minimum time for each household just because we're neighbors next to each other. One of the things we do envision in the next 2 years is to move into more care navigation, not where someone is providing in-home care, but for someone who knows the community and intimately knows our households and has that relationship to help them navigate the services that are available to them in the community. That might lead into a collaborative effort in presenting our organization to a care providing organization to say the benefits of being in the same neighborhood and providing joint care.
Thank you. You have. Anna.
A little bit more familiar with.
Can you repeat the question for our folks online and then?
Question was, is how does Valley Village relate to VPAS, Virginia Agency for
Valley Program for Aging.
Program for, well, Ann Bender is on our board,
Yes, yes.
but we collaborate very well. 2 years ago, we did a four session education program introducing our members to the services that were available in our neighborhood for in-home healthcare, in-home care, further services, whatever you want to call it. And VPAS made a presentation that one evening. So we certainly don't see anything but a collaborative effort where we are simply coordinating members who are living with this intention of independence while still in community. And we utilize VPAS and other organizations to help us accomplish that. Does that answer for you?
It does. Beth, do you want to add? Put you on the spot, but Beth Bland is here. She's our director here in Harrisonburg, Rockingham.
Yeah. Add to that is that we are a nonprofit organization, but we are also the local area agency on aging. So that we have to follow with the services that we provide. But mostly our focus is on helping people to live independently in their home by providing, some level of supportive services such as Meals on Wheels or and then help people navigate whatever challenges that they may be facing at that particular time so that they can get connected to service.
For that. And I'll just add that most recently we have partnered on the Dementia Friendly initiative and have provided 4 or 5 dementia friendly sessions for Valley Village. So definitely working together, but it is a different kind of service. Do we get involved in elder care?
I mean, like if somebody's in a bad situation, are you all somebody that?
The question is, if somebody's in a bad situation, is VPAS somebody that you can call? I would say yes. Our case managers work with that a lot and will refer to adult protective services or social services when it's appropriate. So it just sort of depends on what the need is. We also have caregiver support and Meals on Wheels, some medical transportation, quite a few services that might help somebody who's in the situation you described and just needs a little support so that they can manage. Okay, so Beth added that we have a relationship with Blue Ridge Legal Services as well.
And simply to point out that we provide none of those services. That is the way that we are delineated. We turn to VPAS, and I forgot about which I took part in,
Good.
dementia training. And so we don't provide those type of services. We lead our members to those type of services and give them the community of support.
We'll just add that yesterday, Beth and I accepted the proclamation that Rockingham County is a dementia-friendly county. And so that was very exciting. We're moving forward and hopefully we'll hear from the city before too long. What other questions do you have?
And Steve, every Saturday morning, right?
7 to 8,
Every Sunday.
Saturday, 7 to 8 a.m. Yes.
Okay. Great show, great information. It's up. You'll get, sorry. It's a long-term care insurance.
Mhm.
And
Huge part. Thank you. So the question is, how does long-term care insurance play a part in retirement planning? And given my background, I thought in the late 90s and early 2000s, this would be a no-brainer. Everyone I talked to would understand they need this. And what I found over the years is that unfortunately, too often, we only see people take that step to acquire it after they've gone through it with an immediate family member. Almost 99% of the time, those are the people that what we call buy long-term care insurance. Unfortunately, what's happened over the last 20 years is that a lot of these traditional long-term care policies that if someone did everything they were supposed to do is now stuck with a much higher premium because the inflation rate on these costs went up because in the 90s and the early 2000s, the actuaries woefully underestimated just how much care, how long people would need it, and how much would be related to cognitive issues. In my line of work, I'm kind of like a general practitioner with people's finances and their family, and I really get down and deep. Unlike a general practitioner, I can spend a lot of time with people. So I'm constantly on a quasi-dementia watch to see if mom or dad is forgetting where they banked or something doesn't seem right. And so one of the things I try to encourage people is you start getting a handle on your stuff now and with a significant other, and be cognizant that someday you may not be able to make all these decisions yourself. Long-term care insurance is one of the ways that we can give ourselves choice. And when we think in terms of our parents or our spouses or our children or our close friends, we would not want them to be in a situation where they don't have choice. Long-term care insurance is saying the risk that I have in retirement, which is becoming disabled to the point I can't take care of myself. And the older we get, the higher the probability just keeps going. This gives me a choice to pass that risk on to an insurance company. Now, a lot of these traditional policies have become very unaffordable for many, many people. We still look at it, we go through a process of elimination because the last thing I want to do is make a whole retirement estate financial plan based on ignorance. We need to go through a process of education. If I'm not going to purchase long-term care insurance, it's because it's prohibitively expensive. And I know that because I've gone through it. That's the answer we want. There are other ways that people can do this now with other types of things, but they're much more expensive. And it's a longer discussion with those. But I think it's a huge component. I appreciate you, Beth, for bringing it up. Doesn't mean everybody needs to go out and buy long-term care insurance, but you have to be realistic and think, do I want to live in a private room? How much is that going to cost? Medicaid will not give you a private room. You will get the lowest level of care out there. I'm not saying that it's terrible, but you get the lowest level and the least amount of choice. So if you want your decisions to be made by you and not by themselves, then you at least need to explore this at least once a year. If you do have it, then you check in on it once a year. And I really want to hit this home and I'll be quiet. If you can't do most long-term care insurance, you'll see the quote, 70% of people after the age of 65 will need some form of long-term care or some form of care. That is absolutely true. Read the fine print though, half of that is for 3 months or less. So for most people, that's Medicare covered, mainly out-of-pocket coverage. After 3 months is when you start needing to pay it for yourself. But if you do need to use one of these policies, remember, most of them require you to have 2 activities of daily living that Jeanette referred to earlier. If you can't walk or bathe or dress or you have cognitive issues, there's a high probability you're not going to be able to deal with the insurance company with your long-term care policy very well. You need somebody in your back corner with you. So a family member, someone who's got your back once a year needs to understand this policy, especially if they live out of state. All right, I won't go over, but I hope that answers. Yes.
I have heard, and I don't know if it's not in the state of Virginia. Our money is still there.
Yes. We have several shows about that. CSWadvisors.org. But yes, they're called asset-based long-term care policies. They're actually more commonly used as a life insurance policy, a whole life insurance policy. So it's a big chunk of money you're throwing to the insurance company. Usually we see anywhere from 50 to 100,000 per person. Or they pay 10 to 20,000 per year for 6 to 10 years. They're not cheap. What they do is they typically give you some ability to get most, if not all of that money back anytime that you need it for any reason. Some of them have surrender charges. Some of them allow you to get it up front. They also may have some earnings. When I look at this stuff, I just look at it as an alternative to having money sitting in the bank. I don't look at it as an alternative to other types of investments. If I have 100,000 sitting in the bank and I have 100,000 worth of long-term care insurance, care policy needs I have to pay for, I've got about 100,000. If I have it in one of these policies, sometimes it might equate to 3 to 4 or 500,000 worth of payments for long-term care needs. So you can really leverage that money. Now you need to still have cash in the bank separate from that. So you need to have a more substantial amount of funds to be able to afford them. But yes, it's there in case you want it for any reason. It's there in case you need long-term care, and it's there as a death benefit when you die to your children, to your family or heirs or wherever you want it to go. So it definitely is worth looking into, but it's a much higher entry point. I hope that answers that question. And there's only about 8 companies now that do traditional long-term care insurance. It used to be hundreds. It's really shrunk. It's very expensive.
What happens when I'm bankrupt? I have a customer that asked me, I told him I have no idea, I don't do anything with it.
Okay, so you have in the state of Virginia what's called the State Guarantee Association. And what that is, basically think of it like a kitty. Like we're all got to put money in this room if we want to play ball. And what happens if typically with these long-term care insurance policies, there'll be a cap. And it might be $300,000. And so and this has happened with some of our clients and their family members, they might be, and they're paying $10,000 a month of memory care. Eventually that money's gone. And what happens is the company goes under, it goes in what's called receivership. The state of Virginia comes in, they try to find a white knight to basically take over the defunct policy. And the state, and you can all see this in any policies you have, or you can look online, that it's typically limited to about $300,000 for life insurance. So if your company goes under and you die, your family will get up to $300,000 back by the state. There's a limit that the state will cover. So insurance is different than money in a bank. Insurance is not covered by the federal government. And so you're looking at, usually it's about $300,000. Once that's done, the insurance company is done. There's no more to pay out. Even if you bought the policy, it said it would pay more. If they are under, that's it, because that's all the state can afford. Then you're on Medicaid or you're on your own. That answers that question.
I have a question on here. Can you tell us about annuities that start paying in?
Yes, those are, we call them qualified longevity annuity contracts. These were updated in 2014. I think they've updated them again. Those are basically, I give the insurance company, I'm just going to use $100,000. And I'd say you hang on to it. If I pass away between now and the next 15 years, my family's going to get the 100 back. But in 20 years, I want to start getting a pension from you for the rest of my life. And usually the rate is much higher, obviously, than I would typically earn. The one thing I would tell people about that, and anytime we talk about insurance companies, the claims are backed by the paying ability of that insurance company. So you do need to look at ratings. I know we had a good question about that earlier. I unfortunately am not versed in ratings agencies for facilities, but as for insurance companies, we typically look at like AM Best. If it's A- or better, that's what we're looking for. But the main issue with these long-term annuities is you need to understand what is your internal rate of return. So if I put 100 in now and 20 years later, I get X number of dollars a month, and somebody like me helps you crunch this. But what did I end up getting? Did I get 3% a year? Is that worth it for 20 years? How does the math work out? When interest rates move up, these things get better for the consumer. So now some of these policies are looking better for a while. We just ignored them because when interest rates were so low, you as a consumer were not getting you would get like 0.5% for a 15-year investment. You're better off putting it in the bank. So it just depends. It's a great question. It depends on the rate, but you can get that very quickly and very easily to see exactly what it would need. The last benefit for that, it does reduce your required minimum distribution if you're over 72 and it's money in a retirement account. They've increased the amount you can use into this. And when you put it into one of these policies, the IRS doesn't calculate it anymore when it requires you to take money out of your retirement account, which will happen if you're 72 or older now. I want to let anybody else talk. I'm going to sit.
You're just answering questions. That's what we want. What else is on your mind? While you're thinking, I have a question for any of you. Have you ever had an experience where somebody was about to make a change, a life change in where they lived, and they wanted to try it first? And if so, how does that work? So suppose I'm thinking of selling my house and I want to know what it would be like to live in an apartment in the city, or what it would be like to live in a continuing care retirement community. Is there an option for trying it out before you make that commitment?
There's a chapter in that book.
I know there is. I've read it a couple times too.
So speaking from our community, I'm not sure that there's a real solid way of trying it out outside of, number one, being on a wait list, because being on the wait list, you then do get communications. You get invited to events on campus at times. You get to taste a little bit of that, experience that a little bit. So I think that would be a good option to try to explore. I think, as any of us has set up here too, doing your research, talking to folks that live on campus, talking to neighbors that you see out and about, or whatever other opportunity. I think you could experience a little bit more Valley Village to be a part of it, but talking and just exploring it, I think would be a very big important component as well. I will add, we do have a guest house on campus. If you're on our wait list and wanted to stay overnight, and explore, just to be able to see what the dining room is like, etc., or just visit during the day, come to our dining venues. You can learn a lot just by seeing and feeling the vibe and talking with folks and tasting the food, all of that, just exploring it, I think will be very important. So that's our perspective. I think it's a very good question.
Sorry, I just had a thought. I've got my firstborn going to college next year, and it made me think, we think it's a very smart thing for parents and their kids to go look at different colleges, right? They're only going to be there for 4 years. This could be the rest of your life. This could be 20. My grandmother is 97. She's still kicking, so she could have another 10 more years. Yeah, that's 30 years. You absolutely should investigate the place, but if I could emphasize more than anything else, get on the waiting list. And I preach this to clients all the time. I don't care how much it costs. I don't care if you don't ever get that money back. I can't tell you how many bad situations where people were stuck and they didn't have any place because there wasn't any vacancies. And if I could stress again, we're all getting older. This country is getting more and more older people. You guys need a place to go. There's not as many places to go. And those that are, the costs are going up. So start figuring this stuff out now while you can. But yeah, absolutely come visit. I've come up here for years, and the environment now in the Nook in the cafeteria was really great. I used to laugh because I would tell my grandmother, this is one of the only few places I can go and get liver at lunch. But now there was other things that I enjoy a little bit more than liver that I could see there. So it was really neat. So yeah, I would absolutely encourage people to try it out. One thing, and especially, I would caution anyone, definitely try out things like the husband and wife selling everything and getting an RV and living in that. You absolutely should try something like that out first, because in 2 years and there's no house and there's no marriage, that's not going to be a pretty situation. So.
Started this conversation too. We just talked about evaluating your own self, evaluating your own needs, and exploring options from there. And being here and listening And gathering the information is so important. Having those tools in your toolbox to be able to explore before you have no choice or are faced with a situation where you have no choice. One option might sound like a lot of money up front, or one option, whereas comparing it to options of what is the home maintenance going to look like? What repairs might I need to make? What is my support system like out in the community? Will somebody be able to put together 24-hour assistance for me if I need it? Is that even available at that time? So exploring those options, what's best for you and what's available and realistically accessible to you, I think too, is just so very important with whatever route, evaluating, budgeting, and kind of going from there. So I just wanted to share that. I was reading about it just yesterday, that it might sound great, but then aging in place sounds so comfortable in your own home. It's familiar, it's comfortable, it's everything, but then to take into consideration, do I have that support system that can help me with that next step when it's needed? So there's a lot to just kind of take into consideration. You're doing a great job just by exploring it now. So I just appreciate you being here.
You. Beth, you had a,
I had a real estate question.
I think we do.
Okay. And you. Your perspective, right, in terms of, you know, do I stay in my home and make it aging friendly? You know, how much do I invest here versus just aging friendly?
Yes, that's what I addressed kind of when I said to, if you decide to do an addition, are you going to be able to recoup that money? You know, I've seen people do this. They end up with the most expensive house on the block. You don't want to do that. And so I think if you can do moderations rather than doing the big renovation, you know, maybe is better than doing an addition. Does that help? I mean,
Yeah.
so, I mean, the thing is right now, you're going to sell your house for a good price. But when you go to the next one, you're going to have to pay the big price to do that. So that's why I was saying, if there's some way you can alter your home, if you're not ready to go to a retirement place. So, because there's not a lot, but there are a number of gentlemen out there that will come and look. And there's some ladies that have gotten into the contracting business now. And it's amazing what they can do on a reasonable rate.
So questions about this market, and maybe Brian, this might be perfect. But the housing market is just so outrageous right now.
It is.
Are there
And
any projections of how long this-
I think we're going to have this for another good year. But I think if you're like looking to buy a house and you're planning to maybe move out in another 2 or 3 years, no, you don't want to do that. But I think if you're willing to stay in your house 5 to 7 years, you know, that's the way the cycle is. It's up and down. So I think you should be able to recoup. I mean, it's amazing what a house sold last year, and I'm seeing it coming back on the market. And I'm like, really? Is there really somebody? And I mean, somewhere out there may be somebody that's willing to pay you that extra $30,000 that house sold for last year. So that's when you're playing Russian roulette, I think, because, you know, are you going to be lucky that right person comes in? Because right now you want to make sure you price your house correct. If your house hasn't gone in 2 weeks, a month at the most, then there's something wrong. Either it's your location or it's your price. Is that?
If you have anything to add to that, and then someone online asked about reverse mortgages.
So the housing, the hard thing is, this reminds me of early 2000s where we couldn't figure out where all these people were coming from. And it was always New Jersey. And you thought at some point they got to run out of people in Rockaway. But one of the things that concerns me is always that, you know, every day we have about 10,000 people turning 65. And this is going to continue for the next 8 years, and at least unless more come in. So I worry that it's going to be for that group and that demographic in an idyllic place like the Shenandoah Valley for retirement, that you're going to continue to see this pressure. Now, again, I could be wrong. I don't like making predictions on markets. If you listen to our show, we try to tell you over and over again. I don't know what's going to happen. And then, of course, we follow up by giving a prediction. That's what men do. But so I would say, though, that this is where planning comes into place. And I don't want people to come away thinking like, this just seems like way too much. Don't think of it all at once, one step at a time. I don't really do a whole lot of specialization. A lot of times what I'm doing is putting down a legal pad, just asking you a litany of questions. And then we figure out, all right, well, you need to go see a lawyer to get this written up. There's some lawyers that do elder law in Harrisonburg, and they're referred to by a lot of other attorneys because they're the only ones that do it. And so we are fortunate to be close there. Those are one other options. Another is reverse mortgages, like somebody brought up. And I'm going to talk about that, and then I'm going to open it up to Jeanette because I don't know the policy here. But reverse mortgages are something that is very, very touchy subject for a lot of people. And there's a lot of misinformation out there. There's been a lot more changes in the regulation over the last couple of decades. One of the things I do caution people is please don't call an 800 number for free information. Please don't submit anything online. Your name will be sold to 1 million people. It's already being sold because of your age. The age has been dropped to 55 now, I believe. And there are new options out there. And I do encourage people to at least explore it. Again, I'm not telling you should do it in every situation, but you should know, what does it mean to you if I did a reverse mortgage? What are my options in that regard? That money that you get from one, I will tell you, people like me are barred from investing it, which is rightfully so. And so if you ever have somebody come to your door, number one, don't answer it. But number two, you should not be investing that money in anything with people like me. Now, you can still do whatever you want, but I usually say put it in the bank, or it can go toward possibly assisted living. But that may be coming down to a, when you go to put down your statement of assets, how a reverse mortgage, it's just going to be income typically that you're getting from that. You can actually still sell your house after you've done this. Almost every situation, your family doesn't have to worry about anything if you've passed away and the bank is owed a lot more money than that house is worth. That's all on the bank. So you don't have to worry about that. But your equity that you own in that house will drop precipitously over time, very quickly. And that's why you're it's a pretty final decision when you do it. The good thing is that you have to have a government agent come and visit with you, make sure you know what the heck you're doing. And so that way you can't sign the bottom line until you've gone through that process. One thing I would stress for people is make sure your family is involved from the beginning, not at the very end. A lot of times, maybe the husband and the wife or whomever has really thought this through and is making the best possible decision for them, although we never know until time has gone by. And kids come in, or this kid's spouses come in and say, no, because they may be thinking misinformation, this is just a sale, or they may be thinking, I would rather have that property go to us. So be very wary of that. Make sure everybody's on the same page. I don't know if you have anything else. Okay. So it's probably just when you're applying, it's no longer, if you have a reverse mortgage before you apply for independent or assisted living facilities, most likely then is all they're going to see is this is an income stream because it is tax-free income.
Yeah, and I don't know anything about the reverse mortgages either, but I had a house listed that was, and there was a time frame. So the family ended up losing everything because we didn't get it sold in the timeline.
Well, I know that, and these are just rough numbers. Say you're getting a mortgage for $300,000, a standard traditional mortgage. You're probably looking at anywhere from $5,000 to $7,000 of closing costs. A reverse mortgage, your closing costs are going to be a lot higher. And that's just going to eat away at, if you own the entire 300,000, now your equity is 270 or 280. And again, I'm just throwing out examples. And so the value of the house, if it doesn't go up, your equity is going to continue to go down because that's what's making those payments for you. But you can still sell it. And so if you sold it for 250 and you owe 200 to the bank, you're still paying the bank off that 200, but you're keeping that 250. So you need to stay on top of what is my equity value. If we never even plan to move, but at least we know if we had to, if we needed to sell, what we'd be looking at.
We have used up most of our time. Is there anything pressing yet that you feel like you needed to have addressed? This has been a wonderful presentation and I appreciate it. I just want to circle back to getting all the information together before you make a decision, because this is not just a financial decision, not just a decision for your physical needs, and not just an emotional decision. It's all of these together. And in the back of this Right Place, Right Time book, he has a suggestion where you rate your sense of purpose, your sense of social connection, physical well-being, financial well-being, and your how you feel about the place you are now. And use that to evaluate where you go next. So if you're doing well in all of those areas, perhaps you stay where you are. If you're aging in place in a home that you love, but your physical well-being and your social well-being are limited because you're not getting out to see anyone, then you have to take a look at which is more important, that I stay in the house that I love or that I connect with people and stay emotionally healthy. And so there's so many pieces to this decision. And I think we've probably only scratched the surface today, but I'm glad that we did. And thank you to each of you for coming and for each of you as well. Diana, it is.